Get ready, North Carolina. It's hoodie season. I have no idea why.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, hoodie bound, and this is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view. That's Isaac Shade of Locked On Tar Heels. I have no idea why anything has happened here, but indeed it has, and this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We're appealing to North Carolina fans here, so we might as well wear hoodies, right? Because
100%.
Hoodie season is real. Isaac, I don't get this. I don't get it at all. This is a guy who's never coached in college football, that got run out of the NFL after being the best coach of all time because he wasn't good anymore, who is a curmudgeon of a personality and is now going to somehow recruit, who wanted all the power and control in New England and now goes to college where you have to delegate to be successful with NIL and the portal and recruiting. You have to. You tell me Bill Belichick is going to have a lot of success talking to donors and boosters who want to tell him what to do? Red flags, red flags across the board. Hoodie season, but red flags.
No, it's all good. Like, Carolina needed to get a younger coach, and they did. Mack Brown was born August 27th, 1951. Bill Belichick born like 7 months later, April 16th, 1952. Spencer, we're good. It's golden. No, seriously, this guy, look, he's bringing along Michael Lombardi, his GM from New England, and I like, they're apparently getting a new full-on GM staff with, like, in totality, like 30 new staffers as part of the football program. And I think Bill is going to completely delegate, as you said, like, all of this. I don't think we're going to see him doing a ton of recruiting. Why? Because it's all transactional now anyway, which sets up for him, to have any sort of success that if he's going to. Is it, getting somebody that's going to be around for 2 decades? Absolutely not. This is the contract.
He might not even be around for 2 years.
Exactly. The contract's 5, but we'll see what happens. This is definitely not a long-term solution. The hope for success, if you're North Carolina, is that Bill Belichick can set up a foundation that others are able to build on, of, as he talked about on the McAfee show earlier this week, basically building an NFL program down at the college level. Can he do that? I don't know, but apparently we're going to find out.
Yeah. Did you think, everybody, that I was done with reasons why this couldn't work? I'm not.
Oh, keep bringing them.
Yeah, I'm not, because there are just so many questions that I have here. Why would North Carolina go after a guy whose stated desire is to not be there? Because when a contract in college is signed, one of two things happens. The buyout is paid, or most often, I should say, the buyout is paid by the school to get him out of there, or the buyout is paid by his new employer, and the athletic department is well off because of it. One of those things feels incredibly likely to happen to me.
Yeah, we'll take the money. Like, the initial reporting, I haven't seen. The North Carolina official release said 5 years. There was no money attached to it. But the reporting from Inside Carolina, which is a very great boots-on-the-ground organization, they're part of 247 Sports, had been reporting earlier today 3 years, $30 million for this contract. And so I don't know what the number is going to actually be, Spencer, but that's wild. Wild.
For a guy who has never coached, he has never been a GA, he's never been a special assistant, he's never been an advisor. I don't even know where Bill Belichick went to college.
Somewhere else. Look, part of it with North Carolina is because his dad, Steve, was an assistant at North Carolina for a couple years. And so there was some, like, affinity there from Bill Belichick.
Oh, well, certainly he learned a lot about college football from his dad, Steve. I mean, nothing has changed about the sport from then until now. His dad coaching at North Carolina legitimately was that before World War II?
Yes. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know dates. But Belichick just, you're asking, went to Wesleyan University, in case you care.
Okay, well.
But no, look, Spencer, here's what he's been doing. Belichick's been playing the long game. You ready for this? You know how he's been going on Manning Cast every Monday night on Monday Night Football? The dude is just doing that so he has an in to get Arch to transfer from Austin. That's clearly the play here.
Okay. The guy who Tom Brady wanted to leave is going to lure Peyton Manning's son away from an offensive guru who is a genius play designer at Austin, Texas, where he's been for the last 2-3 seasons as the future in waiting for the Texas Longhorns. That's the big play that Belichick's going for.
Absolutely. No, and that's where you're wrong. It's not Peyton's son, it's his nephew. See that?
Sorry, sorry, Cooper's son. Peyton's
no,
nephew.
obviously I'm completely joking. That's way off. But
okay, good.
Let me that was dripping with sarcasm if you could not tell.
I'm just full Bill Belichick. There's no emotion. Emotion doesn't register anymore. Just bounces off.
I'll speak to you some emojis next time, Spencer. Look, I texted with a few Carolina football players, former football players earlier today. Like, here is one anonymous, I won't share who it is, but just texted me, quote, "Not a fan. We need long-term stability and vision, and he can't provide that. I hope I'm wrong," end quote.
That's exactly where I come down. That's exactly where I come down. There is absolutely no way that I can see him playing out all 5 years of this contract. I can't even see hey, we'll bring you back for the 5th year, but with a mutually agreed upon arrangement that you won't be back for a 6th. We're not going to extend you or anything like that. This is just a play for him to get to the NFL, a play for him to maybe try and get his son to be the head coach in waiting at North Carolina. What can you tell us about that?
So here's what's funny about that part of the whole. So we've known about this Belichick possibility since basically like back over the weekend. And the entire time that stipulation has been flatly either like trumpeted from some people or flatly refuted from other people. And to this point, as we record on Wednesday night, we still at this point haven't seen the particulars of that. So Spencer, it's like, there's this weird thing where that's not a foreign thing, right? Like, people do this all the time, have coaches in waiting. Sometimes it's son, sometimes it's longtime assistant, whatever it is. But it feels kind of weird to me when it's a new coach coming in. It's like, hey, I want to grab my son from another school, albeit his defense has been playing very well this year. And so we're waiting to see on what's going to actually happen with that whole side of things.
It's so strange. He's a huge name. Never been in college before. The last time he was coaching anywhere, it wasn't going well. He couldn't figure out the offensive side of the ball. This is a guy who for years, Isaac, as the coach and GM of the Patriots, completely failed to identify and develop offensive talent. The defenses, schematically, are going to be really good. That's the only positive thing that I can say about North Carolina. I don't have confidence about what this means for the transfer portal, for the connection with donors, for NIL, for high school recruiting, for on-field results in the area that matters, which is wins and losses. I see so many different avenues for this to go down, and almost all of them are bad, and very few of them are good.
Yeah, I think so. To your point, we had our ACC squad show earlier this week. I had to step in and host because our great host from Locked On Canes, Alex Dono, was out, and the NC State guys were just purely giddy about this possibility, just handing it to me all show long. And that's, I think what's funny is North Carolina fans are trying to wrap their brains around it. I think kind of trying to talk themselves into it, while the rest of the rivals around are just kind of celebrating and dancing because of everything you're saying there, Spencer. And so it's just trying to figure out, like, can this be a good thing? Can this work? As you said, the defensive schemes will be there. As somebody that's been, was for so long a frustrated fantasy football player, because I would always try to start my studs against Bill Belichick. And of course he's going to scheme against them. So that's a thing, but what's going to happen offensively and in the win and loss column, I don't know. But Carolina's coming off a 6-6 season. And I guess you could have a worse record than that, but we'll see.
You could be Florida State.
You could be Florida State.
That's worse. Well, Belichick's known for his hoodie. You know who else wore a hoodie? Emperor Palpatine.
He did.
But hey, Palpatine returned, so
He did.
you never.
That was a crazy turn, by the way. What are we doing?
Crazy
Star
turn?
Wars.
No, the word is horrible turn.
Yeah, well,
Okay. I will go off on a tangent. Isaac Shade locked on Tar Heels. Thanks, Isaac. He's not the only coach that is coming out of the woodwork. Rich Rodriguez. That's a hoodie off kind of vibe at West Virginia. Coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Not number 2, not number 3, it's number 1. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. It's all in the same spot. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you can view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, it's $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. It could be something as simple as Ole Miss over Kentucky, or Ole Miss over Duke, rather. That's probably going to happen. You win that bet, you get $150 in bonus bets at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The return of Rich Rod. I like it. That's Mountaineer Paul locked on West Virginia. Paul, do you like Rich Rodriguez being back with the Mountaineers?
Brother, I don't know if there's a word, but if it's more than like, that's the word. We're ecstatic. This couldn't have turned out any better. It was 11 days of agony, of Pat McAfee hints, of just everything. I feel like we missed the window the last couple of days to really announce it live on his show, which is what Pat wanted to do, which brings us so much money and just exposure in general. But I'm imagining that's going to happen tomorrow. As far as just, this is a redemption story, Disney-esque proportions. This is a guy that admits that he made a huge mistake 17 years ago, going to Michigan where he just didn't fit. He's too hard-edged of a coach. These five-star kids, they had options at West Virginia. When you were 2.5-star kids, you can coach them a little harder, especially back in those days. And he brought that to Michigan. It just was not a fit. So they ran him off inside of 3 years. Didn't even get to the end of his third year, so less than 3 years. 20 players transferred in the second year. A lot of people think he's a bad coach. He's really not. He just didn't get a chance. And he's had one of only 3 10-win seasons in Arizona history. And now he's flipped an FCS program into a group of 5 power.
Yeah, I think the fit component can be overblown, but not in every instance. Brian Harsin, for example, is a head coach at Boise State after Chris Peterson went to Washington, and he does really, really well.
Yeah.
And then he goes down to Auburn, and it never clicks.
Not a good fit.
And people could see that. And people have those questions about Kalen DeBoer. I think DeBoer is so good that he's going to make it work. Like 9-3, yeah, disappointing. It is a failure of a season for Alabama in year one. Every season that follows is not going to necessarily be that way. Like, I don't see that situation here. But with Rich Rodriguez, I think it's easy to look at it and say, well, they're grasping at the past. They're trying to cling to something that used to be. And I don't see it that way, because since he was last at West Virginia, Paul, number one, this is a completely different looking sport from a roster acquisition standpoint. Right. And number two, he hasn't been out of it. So he understands those changes. He understands the landscape, and he's proven he can still coach. And he's coached at a place that I think relative to where they've been was harder than what it is to win at West Virginia. Neil Brown had 9 wins just last season, and they were close to pushing for a conference championship again in 2024. West Virginia, I don't know that they necessarily pop into the conference championship conversation in 2025, but they're at most they're 3 years away, and I think probably they're 2 if you run this thing correctly from being at that spot. Because like you mentioned, Jacksonville State, which is in the state of Alabama, not Florida, for those of you out there, they went FCS to Conference USA, and he just won Conference USA in a blowout title game. I mean, he is still capable of winning in this modern landscape of college football. I think that Jacksonville State job relative to West Virginia in the Big 12 is a tougher place to win, and that's why I like the move.
9 wins down the stretch, right? Like 9 in a row. Like they started out 0-3, real bad. And then he coached them, and they ended up winning, and they beat the better teams on their schedule. Jamie Chadwell making almost $5 million a year at Liberty, spanked them. They got more resources than almost any team in Group of 5. And here's Jacksonville State, who is on record of having the least resources in Group of Five, winning that title. It was a big statement from him. And then here's kind of the backstory to this. So West Virginia, probably Rich Rod wasn't their first choice. Andy Kotelnicki was probably their first choice.
Yep, he interviewed for the job.
Yeah, and here's why college football is a little broken right now. Bad teams aren't in the playoffs. So when they fire their coaches, good teams are still playing. And who's going to leave a playoff team? Not very many coaches where you're going to be looked at like Rich Rodriguez was. So it kind of sucks. But how it's worked out for us is like this. Ken Kendrick owns the Diamondbacks. He has openly stated, along with Governor Justice and Pat McAfee, West Virginia has a blank check. This is on record, probably in the $8 to $12 million range, NIL and full revenue share. So I could see, because of the way the sport is now, West Virginia coming back a lot quicker than people think.
What are your expectations for how he approaches the transfer portal? Because part of the reason, aggressive. Yeah, but I just want to say real quick, part of the reason that Kotelnicki is not the head coach is because of the way the calendar is set up, because you have to attack it right now, because West Virginia is not that far off. West Virginia is not willing to wait. Heck, Oregon hired Dan Lanning when Georgia was in the middle of a national championship run. He was their defensive coordinator, and he just stuck it out there because Oregon felt like he was the right guy after they, couldn't really make it work with Justin Wilcox at Cal, who's an Oregon grad. And I just find that to be another example of, hey, this college football calendar is messed up. It is dumb. Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. And that might lead to West Virginia not going after their not being able to get their number one target. Because I respect Andy Kotelnicki saying, look, I want to be your head coach, but I'm not leaving this. I got a chance to win a national championship here. And that's not something everybody can say. But now that they have Rich Rodriguez there, the portal is open right now. You feel they'll be aggressive. Yeah,
they're going to go out to probably it's his history. He's going to get a dual threat guy to run this offense. You've already got a freshman All-American who had a really great season this year, in Jaheim White at running back. We all know how good he is. I would love to see him in this Rich Rod offense, but if not, I'm sure we're going to have more than enough to get players this year. That's, we're bottom third of the Big 12 in the last few years under Neil Brown and NIL, and the donors were very loud and clear on this. If you hire, and this is the backstory to this, like I said, Ren Baker may leave over some of this stuff because reports were coming out he was bullied, he was strong-armed. Like the donors said, no, we want Rich Rodriguez in this situation. That's literally how it went. So
that's the athletic director was strong-armed, do you feel?
That's what a lot of people feel like, yeah. At the end of the day, a lot of candidates fell by the wayside due to the calendar or due to fit, and Rich Rodriguez was still standing at the end. But early reports were like, listen, the donors are throwing a fit right now. Like, they don't want anybody but Rich Rod. They're willing to write a blank check. McAfee's being vocal publicly. Pac-Man Jones yesterday put out a tweet saying, listen, I'll give any DB on West Virginia's team that gets 2 interceptions $100K. Every 2 interceptions, you get $100K. All these donors are like, we've got 2 billionaires and several millionaires that with a total of 6 that stood together and said, and some of these are on the board of governors that said, no, we want Rich Rod against every candidate that he tried to go hire. So there is a backstory to this that we don't know where Ren Baker really sat with all this. My gut feeling was that Rich Rod wasn't his first choice. And I think, I don't know if bullied's a good word, but there was definitely confliction there. Yeah.
Persuaded.
Definitely persuaded. And I think it's going to work out for us in the long run, because this is all about resources, man. And if you give Rich Rodriguez, who has done less or more with less most of his career, a lot of resources, I have no clue what he's capable of.
Do you expect him to be able to win a conference championship at some point?
I do. He's done it before. He just did it. He's a winner, man. He didn't work out at Michigan, but like I said, he gave Arizona a 10-win year, one of 3 ever. Their other one was just last year. And then obviously he's winning with an FCS roster right now at the Group 5 level. If you give him more resources that he can pick, I truly don't know, because he used to not have anything to work with. It could have, I don't want to say Nick Saban-esque run, like he was 59. By the time he was 69, he had 7 titles. I'm not saying that, but over the course of the next 7 to 8 years, we could probably get a couple Big 12 conference titles. Like, these are the expectations we have right now. And we'll see how it lands comes, after this season. I'm sure we'll adjust that. But in the honeymoon phase, that's where it feels like.
Mountaineer Paul, Locked On West Virginia on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. Paul, appreciate the time, my man.
Thanks, man.
Darian Mensah is going to Duke. Should you care about that? Yeah, you should, because that's a team, that's a program that can push for an ACC championship. Or can they? Well, that's coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time, which has this feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. Do you want to see your favorite football team play live for maybe the last time if it's in a non-playoff bowl game this year, or it could be the last time if it's a playoff bowl game? Game Time is the place to get your tickets. Plus, they've got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. It's a really easy thing to do and is so unbelievably convenient. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase if you want to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Should you be thinking about Duke as an ACC title contender in 2025? That's JJ Jackson, Locked On Blue Devils, here to join me. And JJ, I like this move. I was surprised, very surprised at the Malik Murphy transfer because it went so well this year. Duke was 6-1 in one-score games, and he set a single-season touchdown record. All of a sudden, he's in the portal, and he could go to Auburn. He could go to a number of different spots where it would fit. But then Duke goes out and gets Darian Mensah, who I think was one of the top quarterbacks available since John Mateer at Washington State is not in the transfer portal. Is Darian Mensah a guy that can keep Duke in the conversation to make the ACC title game?
Yeah, how quickly do these things go, man? One day you're talking about Malik Murphy leaving, who could be the answer, and literally hours later at that point, we see Darian Mensah inside Cameron Indoor Stadium on Tuesday night watching the Duke basketball game, and then follows it up with a commitment to play for Duke. Why not, Spencer? Why can't he take this Duke football team to the next level and contend for an ACC title with what you saw Duke do in year one under Manny Diaz? You know that he's going to have the defense taken care of. He's got an offensive staff that was there with him for so many years at Miami, and we saw this Duke offense have a really successful season through the year, thanks in part to Malik Murphy. The one kind of part of their offense that was missing a little bit was consistencies within the run game, and Malik Murphy is not a mobile quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. You get a little bit more versatility there with Mensah, and what you got to love about it is 3 years left of eligibility. Like, if this thing continues to go well, you've got continuity there at that quarterback position, and we could be seeing a Duke football team compete for an ACC title, which is so crazy to think about, man.
I think everyone nationally kind of forgot about Duke because, well, Mike Elko's gone and he did a great job. You know, the big win against Clemson to begin the 2023 season. Then it still was a good year, but wasn't as good as maybe it looked like it would be in that particular moment. They lose Elko, hire Manny Diaz. He goes 9-3, and I want to talk about that. But is there an expectation that Darian Mensah comes in and has Duke playing at that sort of level where they can contend with a Miami, who they were tight with for a while until the end, and Cam Ward and the Hurricanes went on one of those patented late game runs that they covered, what was it, 21.5? It was just disgusting. Just a disgustingly bad beat. If you had Duke plus, I think it was 21 or 20.5 in that particular game. But is Darian Mensah a guy who you think keeps the quarterback room and the production you get from that spot at where it is, or do you think he can elevate above what even Malik Murphy did this season?
I think there's got to be optimism that he can elevate it, right? Like, as I mentioned a moment ago, the fact that he's got a little bit of mobility to his game and that sort of thing, and the fact that there's now proof out there on what this Duke football team can be under Manny Diaz. This is a guy that he wanted. Duke worked very quickly on making sure it worked with Darian Mensah. As we talked about, this is a guy that many of the sites out there that are putting together their transfer portal player rankings, he's at the very top, and he chooses Duke football of all places to be. I mean, what a year it was for this Duke team, not to undersell at all what Mike Elko did these past 2 years. As you mentioned, they had the big Monday night win over Clemson to open up the season. Last year, Duke football hosted College Game Day for the first time ever. Well, what does Manny Diaz do? He beats Florida State for the first time ever, that Duke had never even done before. I know it's a very, very pitiful Florida State team that we saw this year, but that's still
pitiful is polite.
Yeah, that's still an accomplishment no one had ever done before in 26 tries against FSU. And going into a bowl game here in a few weeks, Duke's got an opportunity to have 10 wins in a football season for only the second time ever. They've been playing football for over 100 years, and only once in 2013 has Duke football won 10 games in a season. And in the very first year of Manny Diaz, they're 60 minutes and a victory away from doing that. So now you've got this quarterback on hand that you can build around. I think it's great for Duke.
I think it stinks that Murphy's in the portal and won't be there for that opportunity because it does mean something. Speaks to what I've spoken about for a long time, JJ. The college football calendar stinks. It makes no sense. It's not good for players. It's not good for coaches. It's not good for fans. It's not good for media. And I'm not putting us on the highest priority list there, but it's literally bad for everybody involved. And this is a great reason why. Malik Murphy could have had the chance to finish out the season, but knowing he'd, attract bigger offers to go elsewhere where maybe he plays in the SEC or the Big Ten next year. I mean, this just pops in my head, but Indiana, I think, is going to need a quarterback after this year. Just saying, just an option to throw it out there. I talked about Auburn on yesterday's show. I think that needs to be top priority for Hugh Freeze and the Tigers there. But it's one thing to have a guy that wants to transfer, but to then force him, if he's going to go to a school where he feels it's better for him to leave before the bowl game, I think that stinks. And, going into this game with Ole Miss for Duke, that's going to be tough because Ole Miss has got all their players opting into the game. But still, I think this Duke season should be viewed as a resounding success. It doesn't generate the storylines of an Indiana or an Arizona State, but this is one of the most under-the-radar successful seasons. And in an ACC where I thought NC State and Virginia Tech would take steps forward, and they didn't, but SMU really did. I thought SMU would be good. I didn't think they would be this good. There is an opportunity going into next year to push for the college football playoff, to push for an ACC championship.
Without a doubt, and that's so exciting to hear. Other people say it. We're saying it in the Duke world, obviously, but from the national perspective, the fact that here I am with you, Spencer, on Locked On College Football, and we're talking about Duke and what they can do in the years to come speaks to what Manny Diaz has been able to do. Again, I do think that it's deserving to give credit to Mike Elko for the strong 2 years that he had right out of the gates, and Manny Diaz had to have been taking notes to know that you can go to Durham, you can win. There is a fan base that wants to support a football team that's in an ACC that you can be competitive in right out of the gate. So very optimistic for what the Duke team can do going into next year. And now that you've got the quarterback kind of figured out, it's going to be asking younger wide receivers to step up next season, but most of the defense is coming back. And I think that's a big time factor for the Duke team.
I know Jordan Moore is done, but is Duke's other top receiver done after the season as well?
Eli Pankel's run out of eligibility, and so he has had some massive games this year for Duke. So now you're looking at somebody like Samir Hagans to lead and Quayshawn Brown to lead the wide receiver room for Duke next season. So look out for those names.
I wonder if Duke goes back to the well in the transfer portal for a receiver. Because
why not? Yeah.
Having young, talented guys, that's great. And Mensah has got multiple years of eligibility left. He could be the Blue Devils starter this season and next season. He did reportedly reach out to SEC schools, but they told him thanks, but no thanks. So you make of that whatever you like. I think that just puts a chip on his shoulder and allows him to go to Duke, say, okay, fine, you didn't want me here. I'll show you what I'm capable of. But I think a proven transfer wide receiver would be a really good investment for Manny Diaz in this offensive staff, which, much like the program, is incredibly underrated.
Without a doubt. I think that's kind of what we're looking at with Duke, where they've been able to be these last few seasons. If you can add more weapons for Mensah and this offense, they're going to be in position to win a whole lot of football games next year. And I, for one, am really excited about that, Spencer.
JJ Jackson, Locked On Blue Devils. Check them out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. JJ, appreciate the time.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.